Hi, everybody. Welcome to a Diller Teen Fellows, Diller Teen Tikkun Olam crossover event. I'm Jen Smith. I'm the Executive Director of the Helen Diller Family Foundation programs, and I'm so excited to welcome all of you from around the country, around the world, to join together for this incredible session tonight while we explore what it is to be a young change maker and what you're all doing to change the world right now. So Helen Diller, of blessed memory, who was the visionary behind both of these incredible programs, famously said, "It's never too late, it's never too early or too often to give back and make the world a better place." And that is something that all of our program participants do every day. And we're so inspired by all of you. In the Diller programs, we truly believe that young people are not just leaders of the future, but you're leaders right now. And both of these incredible Diller programs are rooted in young leadership and Jewish identity. So we're thrilled that we can bring together the two programs tonight to learn from one another as we take examples from our young change makers. In the Diller programs, we are so inspired by young people's ability to lead social change. And I'm not only inspired by it, but I truly believe that your generation right now is the strongest generation of leaders that we've ever had to create real change, to repair the world, to implement Tikkun Olam. And some of you who are on the call, who are on the session tonight, have heard me say this before, and I'll say it again because I mean it so much. I really believe that your generation is the one that's going to save us all. So no pressure, but there's a lot of work to be done, and we're really excited to see examples of that in action today. So the Diller Teen Tikkun Olam Awards honors up to 15 extraordinary young leaders each year. It's currently only based in the US, but stay tuned for those of you tuning in internationally. We have plans to expand in the coming years. These young leaders are honored for the work that they are doing through projects that they have created or that they're leading to truly repair the world right now. And you'll hear some of the examples of past honorees that we've brought together to join with Diller Teen Fellows. And Diller Teen Fellows, you have dedicated a year of your lives to connecting with one another across differences, to exploring your own Jewish identities and the impact that you want to have on the world. So I couldn't think of a better crossover, and we're really excited to get started. Which means that I will actually now in a moment turn over the session to actual young voices who will take us through the rest of this session. And I'll start with introducing our incredible moderator, Val Weisler. Val is a 2016 Diller Teen Tikkun Olam awardee. She received the award for an initiative that she created and that still continues to thrive called the Validation Project, which is an organization that works with teens in 105 countries, including yours, wherever you are, in 105 countries to put passion into action. Val is a recent graduate of Muhlenberg College, and in addition to the Diller Teen Tikkun Olam Award, Val has received more honors than I even knew existed. She is an extraordinary leader who has been celebrated around the globe. We're so glad that she's part of the Diller family. We're so glad that you're all part of the Diller family and that you're joining with us tonight. We can't wait to get started. I'm going to turn it over to Val. I also just want to encourage people. This is meant to be a discussion and a dialogue. We want to hear your questions. Val will prompt you when we're going to be turning to audience participation, but please chime in. And also, please, connect with us if there's something that you hear during this session that you want to learn more about after. Thank you. Val, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Jen. And hello, everyone watching. I'm so excited to get to speak with you all today and get to introduce you to some people that I really look up to and admire. My name is Val. As Jen mentioned, I'm the founder and the CEO of the Validation Project, and I use she, her pronouns. I'm based out of New York, and I'm really excited to introduce the people that I'll be speaking with today. First off, I'd love to introduce Lucy Beckett. Lucy is a 2019 awardee of the Diller Awards, and she was selected for her work in creating Camp Nefesh, which is a nonprofit summer day camp for new arrivals in the United States. Lucy is from Sacramento and is currently majoring in Jewish studies and minoring in human rights and migration at the University of California, San Diego. And she's also a member of the Tikkun Olam Awards Review Committee. So Lucy, I know you're on here. I would love for you to share with us what inspired you to take action with your organization and your project.
Of course. Thank you so much for that question, and thank you for having me. It's such an honor to be here. So honestly, there's a lot that inspired me to take action. I started thinking about this in the context of 2016. Pretty much every other day, I got a disheartening news notification on my phone that said something like immigration bans were enacted, things like that. And I saw a lot of hate in the country, especially against new arrivals coming in. So I wanted to figure out a way to assist new arrivals, especially children, to the United States. That's something that's super important and valuable in Jewish culture, the religion, values. So I ended up going on a trip with Mitzvah Corps to Seattle to work at a similar summer camp put on by the International Rescue Committee. And I was so inspired by the work there that I decided to bring it home to Sacramento. And I was able to start Camp Nafesh, as Val mentioned, the summer camp for new arrivals to the United States. And it's still going today. We're entering our 4th summer, and it's been a blast.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing, Lucy. And now our next person that we'll be introducing is Ethan Hirschberg. Ethan is also a 2019 awardee, and he is also a writer, disability advocate, speaker, and consultant who is honored to be the Diller Teen Fellows awardee in 2019 for his work on the journey through autism. And he's also a member of the Tikkun Olam Awards Review Committee. So Ethan should be joining us now. Yep. Hey, Ethan. Would you be able to share with us what inspired you to take action with your work?
Absolutely. And again, thank you for having me here. I would say for me, it would be the lack of education in this world. And the lack of education doesn't necessarily have to have any bad intention, but the rate of people in this world who have a mental health condition, specifically with an autism spectrum disorder, with autism is 1 in 54. So we're just at that 2% mark. And even higher with mental health in general. And whether it's in the news or in my own life that I've seen or in my friends' lives, and just seeing people who don't have enough education on how important mental health is, and being able to share my own experiences through my platform called The Journey Through Autism, I'm able to go and share my experiences to parents and educators and providers across the country. And my main goal is to simply educate, advocate, and inspire. So I'm able to go and help everyone understand from my point of view and the views of others who can't speak for themselves. This is going on year 5, and we are in full force. So I'm very excited.
That's awesome. I can't wait to hear about both of your organizations. So our last person that we're welcoming is Genevieve Liu. And Genevieve is a 2021 graduate of Yale University, having majored in statistics and data science and ethics, politics and economics, and graduating magna cum laude. After her father passed away in middle school, Genevieve developed the first social media for teens who have lost a parent, which is called Slapped, Surviving Life After a Parent. Slapped went on to place 3rd in the Chicago Booth School of Business's 2016 Graduate Social New Venture Challenge and has garnered hundreds of thousands of users. And at Yale, Genevieve was the chairwoman of the Tsai Center for Innovation, where they managed a board of over 25 individuals from across Yale's schools. And this past summer, Genevieve was the first intern to Sheryl Sandberg, the COO of Facebook's executive team. And she will be rejoining Facebook after graduation as a product manager. So Genevieve is joining us right now. Genevieve, I would love to hear from you also what inspired you to take action with your work. I know that it sprouted from the loss of a parent, but I would love to hear more about that.
Yeah, thank you so much for the introduction, Val. And it's such an honor to be on this panel, Lucy and Ethan. Diller has been just such an incredible gift and community to be a part of. So I'm always so happy to just continue to be a part of it in any way. I feel like y'all learned a lot about me from that bio, but there are other things as well. I think to answer your question, I think what inspired my work, to be honest, when I started Slapped, I was 13. And the impetus was my father passed away pretty suddenly. He drowned saving two boys in Lake Michigan. And, that experience, despite having an incredible community and family, I also had two younger siblings. I was 13 at the time. My brother was 10. My sister was 7. And again, despite having this amazing family, the Jewish community was really strong in Chicago, where I'm from. I felt incredibly alone, especially going back to school at 13 and feeling like the only kid who had ever lost a parent at such a young age. And so I think what really inspired my work was feeling really alone and very intuitively going online and looking for other teens who had lost a parent. And it was really actually finding other teens, other kids, that made me realize, I wasn't alone, and, I could move forward with my life, maybe not quite move on, but, move forward. And it was that sort of hope through connection that I think made this very technologically challenged. I mean, I've studied data science in college, did not know anything at the time, inspired me to kind of say, I want something online to connect kids like myself and my siblings. And it was all sort of lots of stuff after that, but that was really the original impetus.
Definitely. Thank you so much for sharing. So I would love to go into more questions for all of you. For the first question, Lucy, I'd love to hear from you first. You talked about what inspired you to start Camp Nefesh. What have been your most valuable resources in starting it and growing it to what it is today?
Wow, that is a big question because I feel that Camp Nefesh was really a community effort. It wouldn't have been possible without the amazing people around me who empowered me and lifted me up. To be quite honest, when I first had the idea for Camp Nefesh, I was very down on myself, and there were definitely a lot of adults who said no. And I felt powerless as a teen. This is such a big issue. I was trying to figure out something to do to help. So one of the biggest supporters of me was the education director at my synagogue and the rabbi at my synagogue. Both helped me, told me how to start a camp. I had zero clue how something like that happens, how to found a nonprofit, right, all of that. So they were with me every step of the way, helping me through it. And I was able to reach out to various community organizations. We ended up partnering with Opening Doors, which is a local refugee resettlement agency. And we were able to set up meetings with them, have them connect us to families. And then just randomly, so many community members and organizations popped up and said they wanted to help. For example, the Jesus Christ Church of Latter-day Saints locally donated lots of food. This year, they're donating PPE. So it's really been a team effort.
That's awesome. Yeah. And I think what you're touching on about like the power of community with the social justice work that we're all involved in, and also the thing we have to go through when we start a organization at a young age, where I know for me, it was really trying to teach myself like how to use someone's "you can't do this" as my ammunition to be like, watch me, I'm going to go prove you wrong. But yeah, I totally really appreciate what you shared. And Ethan, I'd love to hear from you also. I know that you shared, for you, it was this motivation about the lack of education. What resources were helpful for you along the way, or what people as resources also?
Yeah, I would say for me, one of the biggest resources would be networking in general. Whether that is people that I already knew and didn't exactly know what they did as a job, but who were able to help me along the way, or just strangers who I didn't know, who have been able to, go and volunteer their time to be able to help my own cause and the causes of others that are similar to mine. But just being able to go and step a little bit out of your comfort zone and being able to network, because you can really be surprised at how many people are willing to help a good cause.
Definitely, definitely. And Genevieve, what has been helpful for you? You mentioned that when you first started it, it wasn't like you were coming from this point of like, yay, technology, but suddenly it was like what made your heart beat quicker was knowing that you had this community. What was helpful for that?
Yeah, I really do echo a lot of what Lucy and especially actually what Ethan said about networking. And I never, I did not know what networking was when I was like 13, but I think that the sentiment was sort of similar when my mom was like, I know it's scary, but you should talk to, this person's parent who happens to be a lawyer, and you're trying to start a nonprofit. You should talk to this person's parent who happens to do social work and knows about grief and bereavement. And I think that ultimately, I think sharing your story can be something that's positive because you can find individuals who share similar experiences or have connections that you would never anticipate. But I also think that at a personal level, I think being able to sort of share my story and process it in that way was I think healthy in hindsight. I think in college I've had a lot of time to kind of introspect and think about it, but especially with grief, especially I think that is such an unspoken topic. We don't really know what to say, except for I'm sorry, which it helps, but it doesn't really help. I think being able to openly speak about it, especially through Building Slapped, was really positive. So I think being able to, I would maybe, I don't know if I'd call it network, but I think share with more people than you would ever expect. People want to help, as I can say it better than Ethan. I think people connect to causes, especially ones that you in your own personal life have been touched by. Chances are they've also affected otother people. And I think that's a great point.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, I think what you're talking about like, it's so scary to be the first person to share something like a hardship that you've been through or something that you're passionate about. But I'm sure we've all had the experiences in our work of like, you say it, and then you realize that someone who was a stranger a minute ago might now be a collaborator with you, or someone who's deeply impacted by the work that you do because you did have those 10 seconds of courage to speak up, which is really commendable. I want to touch on, Lucy brought this up a bit about the barriers that we face because of our age. I would love to hear from either of you or any of you what kind of barriers you faced because of your age or because of other forms of your identity and how you combated those. Whoever wants to go first.
I'll go. I would say a big thing with age is that there are people who, just surrounding the mental health community that, most of the providers, are either doctors or they are, specialists with a master's degree who have, gone through many years of education, and, who don't necessarily have that personal side, but have the books side. And there are lots of people who, have said, how much do you really know about this topic? And, just by sharing your own experiences, because everyone is different in a way, people would question, would that actually hurt the mental health community in itself, by stigmatizing one person into the, an entire group in general. And my rebuttal to that usually was, of course, everyone is different and everyone, has their own experiences. But for the vast majority of people who have never experienced any sort of condition, being able to just give them a little bit of insight into one person, that is such a powerful tool because you're able to go and kind of connect to either, yourself or someone else in your life that and try and make a couple of those connections in themselves. So more of not as much experience, but still having the personal side.
Definitely. Lucy or Jean-Bea?
Yeah, I'll pitch in there. I think that one thing that I definitely experienced building out Slapped is that, parent loss, despite, in my own experience feeling so isolated, it's actually not that common in this country. It's like 10% under 16 will lose a parent. At the time, that was like 8 million kids. It's probably grown since then. And as you can imagine, access to bereavement resources really does fall on socioeconomic, and as a result, rate declines. And something that we tried to do was not just be a place where teens who've lost a parent can connect online, but also how they can access bereavement resources in their community. And that was really, really difficult when a lot of communities are just grossly underserved. In a lot of communities, parent loss comes in many, many different forms. And while I could share my own story, it was not indicative of other people's. Everyone has their own unique story and their own unique, upbringings. And so a huge part of what we did was we connected not only to local bereavement resources and hospitals, which happen to be in high SES areas most of the time, but also religious institutions, much like Lucy's, and not just synagogues, but churches, mosques, all that have their own cultures and traditions around grieving and bereavement. I mean, I know Shiva, which I love, but it's very different in different cultures, and different schools as well, where, kids are most easily reached. Currently I actually don't work on SLAPT anymore. I sit on the board, but my little sister does work on it, and they've taken a much more scientific, peer-led approach, where they have these peer-led focus groups, and a lot of the challenge, but a lot of the most important work has been, how do we find these different community leaders to build trust around these discussions around grief and resilience when it looks so different, and is so different for different kids. So I think that the question of barriers, not only falls on age lines, which for me wasn't a huge issue. I think I was trying to serve kids who have lost a parent, and I was that kid who had lost a parent. I mean, it was scary because I was a kid, but it helped in the end. But I think it was really also, a cultural and an identity thing, and also understanding my privilege, looking into this issue. So, sorry, very long-winded answer, but I think
no. Yeah, no, I think you touched on a really important point about like equity, and the type of barriers we face are, of course, depending on the privilege that we're walking into the endeavor with. And, the ability to network with who you're networking with is depending on privilege, the resources that you have. And I think what you did is really powerful, of recognizing that there is that gap in what another child who lost a parent might be able to access, and thinking about what you could do to fill that through your project, while also being someone that can just be another kid that's saying, hey, I've been through this too. We don't share the same story, but I can sit with you in your loss, which is really powerful.
Exactly. Yeah.
Lucy, I would love to hear from you also.
Of course. So to be quite honest, almost no one who I worked with when I was starting Camp Nefesh actually knew my real age. I got a lot of random guesses from children, for example. They thought I was 22. For those who I was meeting with, a lot of the times our first interaction would be over email. So when I would go into their office and speak to them, when I met the receptionist at the desk, oftentimes I would be greeted with, "I'm sorry, we're no longer accepting internship applications. Please try again another day." Or a meeting would be scheduled for 10 a.m. on a weekday, and "I'm so sorry, I'm in public school from 8 to 3, so I can't make this meeting." Another thing was legal implications. I wouldn't be able to rent a certain item because I wasn't 18 yet, or I was 15 and just learning how to drive, so I couldn't drive myself to certain meetings. So there were those barriers, but again, the adult support within the community was super helpful. Many adults offered to drive me to certain meetings, to accompany me to certain meetings. Was able to take phone calls during school to take meetings. So it was okay. Other than the few no's, there are so many adults who are empowering and inspiring in this world, and I'm so thankful for them. And I'd say just try to find those people.
Definitely. Awesome. Great. I would love to dive into the next question. So we've kind of touched on all of your journey so far, what barriers you've faced that you've walking into, what your stories looked like to start it. I would love to check in with how you're doing in the present right now, which I know is like a fun question in the midst of a pandemic. But I want to hear from all of you as you've found success with your organizations and your projects, and you've been able to reach really incredible numbers and an amazing impact. How have you as individuals stayed grounded while remaining focused on continuing your support in the work that you're doing, whether that's shifted since you started or it's the same or grown? What does self-care look like for you, and how do you center yourself in your work while also being a person? So I would love to hear from Ethan first, if you'll start us off.
Yeah, of course. And I think that's a really, really important question. On the staying humble aspect, one of my biggest things that I learned from a very young age that my parents taught me was that there's always going to be someone in this world that is smarter than you are, and there are very many of them. So being able to go and to stay humble, I think is super important. On the self-care aspect, a lot of change makers, regardless of age, are pouring in so many hours of their life into their passion projects. And sometimes it can get really overwhelming, because the project is like your child in a way, and you're wanting it to grow so much, and you at times have to take a step back and work on yourself, because if you aren't at your best, then you can't be able to help anyone to your best ability. So being able, for me personally, to take breaks when I need to be able to take a step back and collect myself, I think is crucial. And then in addition, just being able to just understand that you can't do everything perfectly. There are always going to be bumps in the road, but just being able to stay grounded that entire time is really important.
Definitely. Thank you, Ethan. That's super important things you touched on. Lucy or Genevieve?
Yes, I can take it. So currently I am practically doing the same work, just in a little different way. Obviously, I'm not in Sacramento, I'm in San Diego for school. But a big reason why I chose to go to school in San Diego is because of its proximity to the border with Mexico. So luckily, I've been able to do a lot of work here. I'm minoring in human rights and migration, and I'm participating in the Mexican Migration Field Research Program at UCSD. And that's been such a treasure to be able to work with newcomer populations here and on both sides of the border. So this work is definitely taxing. It's really emotional. So self-care is so important. And another thing that one of the biggest lessons, to be honest, in all of this that I've learned is that it's okay to ask for help. That delegation is key when you're a leader in such a big organization or doing such emotionally taxing work. Sometimes you do need a mental health day. So definitely reaching out to peers, to others, and saying, hey, I am really struggling. I need your help with this and this. Or can you give me a little guidance? Because again, I started this work when I was 15. I had no idea what to do. So if I hadn't had those connections in the community, professional connections as well, again, with the networking aspect, I wouldn't be where I am today. So I'm so thankful for everyone who I've met along the way.
Totally, yeah. And I think you touch on like what I think is a really cool part of youth leadership, which is I feel like it's second nature to us to collaborate with one another. And for me, with my organization, it started when I was in my freshman year of high school. But when it really skyrocketed was when I was in college, solely because of the fact that I had a community of friends who were ready to like grab a pizza on a Friday night and have our conversation shift from like what happened over the week that was funny, and also like what social justice events we wanted to bring to the community that we were in. So I think that's really cool about like being ready to ask for help, and also acknowledging that it's not just you individually that gains something from that, but also your organization. Because when your ideas, you can point at them and say like, this came out of this conversation, or this came out of this moment where I was walking on the street and I had that click with a friend and we like ran to the nearest cafe to like start something. I think those are like the really powerful things that come to fruition. So thank you for sharing. Genevieve, did you have anything that you wanted to share? We'd love to hear.
Yeah, no, I think that is really, really wise. Everything that you all have said. I think, I offer a slightly different perspective only because I don't work presently on Slapped anymore. Although, I have been home. I'm going to be home for like a month before I go start at Facebook. So I'm helping out with more stuff with my sister, which has been actually really nice.
Yeah.
But, it was a full 4 years where I was not actively involved, in a day-to-day way. When in high school, it was my life. It was my sense of purpose. And the one thing that I really did learn was that I think when you are trying to find resilience through anything, for me, it was grief. I think finding that sense of purpose and that thing that, keeps you up and makes you feel like you're making an impact, that's the best remedy. And I think for me, having my father pass away so suddenly and it being so traumatic and difficult and awful, I think Slap really was this thing that was bigger than myself. And I was able to be like, okay, this is really hard, but this is what I'm going to throw myself into. And it was a positive thing. And so I think the question of self-care was something I really learned in college, and probably a little bit later than I should have. But it was born out of necessity. I think not having Slapped in my life anymore and being like, wow, I've really got to think about all these things that have happened to me. And I don't have Slap to throw myself into and really think about my own life and my own grief. And I think the advice that Lucy gave was phenomenal about, being honest and asking for help and saying, maybe I need a day off, which is something that I've learned really only recently. But I think also in the way I integrate it, I think is in the more general sense. I found yoga. This sounds silly, but I really did find yoga after later on in high school when Slapped was just stressing me out, but also giving me purpose at the same time. And every day I'm like, you know what? I have a ton of work, but I'm going to cut this time out for myself because I know it's what keeps me grounded. And I think making these choices for yourself is something that is still hard for me intellectually, but I just do anyway because I know it's the right thing. So I think, everything that you all said, but I think especially post sort of like handing off your project, it became very real for me.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's like when there's the room in your brain, it can really come to fruition of like, oh, these are the things that I need to honor and spend time to process and think about, for sure. Thank you all so much for your answers. We're going to move on to a audience Q&A. So we have a question from Emma S. that says, thanks for this. It's so inspiring. I'm wondering if any of you had a time where you felt like quitting along the way. How did you get past that? So I know that we all have different journeys with our organization, but curious if we want to talk about that, if anyone has an answer for this question. I know for me, my role at the Validation Project over the past 8 years has altered and shifted, and there's been times where I've needed to take a breather from it. I've also want to echo what Lucy said about delegating, and that's been really helpful for me. But yeah, would love to hear from whoever wants to share with this question. If there's been any moments, how you got past that, or if your role did change at your organization, what did that look like for you, and why was that important for you?
I can take it. So as I mentioned before, I did get a lot of no's before I got to those yeses. In the beginning, I had a group of other chains who were super pumped to be working with me to do this, but they fell through very early on. So I knew that I was heading into this alone. So at that point, I was very down. I was working on getting through rejections before I got those acceptances. And when I got closer to actually coming through for camp, when I was going through camper applications and it was all becoming real that, here's the camper X who is this age and has these allergies and so on, was like, oh my goodness, 60 campers are in my hands for the next 2 weeks. How am I going to do this? I have no idea. So it really wasn't real in my head until the moment that the kids stepped off the bus. I can tell you now that first day when all the campers stepped onto our blacktop, I was almost in tears because it wasn't real for me until that moment. So there were definitely times when I felt like quitting, and I'm so glad. Best decision I ever made was to keep going. So even when you're not inspired by yourself, make sure to keep pushing. That's my biggest piece of advice.
Yeah, thank you. Ethan, is there anything that you wanted to share with this question?
Yeah, sure. I would say, for me, the only times that I have been wanting to quit would be, frankly, with hate mail. There are unfortunately, a lot of not a lot, but there are a handful of people in this world who don't like what you're doing and aren't very nice about it. And when you receive that, sometimes it can get to you, and it's really degrading. But what I would always do once I received some of that is I kept a drawer with all of the notes from either the followers from my blog or from people that I spoke to, when they would always write me notes, just saying thank you, or saying how I was able to help them in some way, and just being able to read those and kind of reintegrate into my brain, why I was doing what I was doing, was definitely a big motivator to get back on track.
Definitely. Thank you, Ethan and Lucy. Both of the things that you touched on, I think, are really powerful and important for us all to think about. Would you want to answer, Genevieve? Share your thoughts?
Yeah, I think the one thing I'll say is that there are times where it is, as Ethan says, super frustrating. I think this is advice that I would give to my past self, but also anyone who's really trying to embark on any type of project or venture. And I feel like both Ethan and Lucy touched on this, but it's really slow at the beginning. And you feel like you have this amazing idea and you're like, yes. And you're telling all your friends and you're like, oh my gosh, it's going to change the world. I have this vision. And there's all this excitement. And then usually there's like this lull, as you're just scrapping things together, talking to people, trying to build, lots of no's, some haters. It's not that fun. And you're like, is this ever going to happen? I think that question, is this ever going to happen, is just, I see it with my sister as she's trying to take on this new part of Slapped. And I think that's the time where I was like, should I really be doing this? And I really ever thought about quitting. But I think, it was once I started seeing teams benefit from the website. It was once I saw the website up that I tried to just bottle up that feeling. So whenever that feeling came up again, I was like, okay, no, I remember what it's like to feel like I'm building something.
Right. Yeah.
I'm going to feel that again. But I think, warning, and I think anyone who wants to build something meaningful should know this. At the beginning, it's slow, and you just have to keep going and believe in it. So
definitely. And I think so much of the importance of that is like the conversations we're having right now, making sure that the way that we talk about social justice and activism work isn't just a highlight reel, right? And being real with each other like we all are about the no's that we faced and the barriers and the moments of that self-doubt where we were going to be like, you know what, never mind, it's just going to stay an idea. Because that is the transparency I know that I felt was really important when I was feeling like I was at this roadblock, was just hearing from people that they've experienced this too. And also the reminder that your idea is powerful because it's yours. It doesn't have to reach some level of bigness for it to mean something. And a small impact is an impact. If you're impacting your community or your town or the neighbor down the street, that can be just as impactful as something that might have larger numbers. It's really about the quality of the work and the reason that you wake up and you want to do it. So thank you all so much for answering that question. We have a question from our Instagram story that I would love to ask you all, which is, what is the best advice you received along the way of your work? So if there's a piece of advice that really hit home for you, what was it and why has it stuck with you? I know it's a big one.
I'd say, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, echoing off of what Lucy said in the beginning, was that you can always ask for help. And I'll say it again, it's so important because you don't know everything, and being able to, give other tasks to others via delegation it helps you a lot. And everyone has their own skill sets, and that was something that I had to learn, and it definitely was a great benefit in the long run.
Definitely. Yeah, for sure.
So similarly, my best piece of advice I think I've received in regards to my work has been, it doesn't hurt to ask. I've had some pretty big and what I'd say are ambitious ideas in the past. I mean, like a summer camp, that's pretty ambitious. But I think one of the biggest things was I'd be like, well, what if we do this? What if we do that? And someone told me, well, why not just ask? And I ended up reaching out to a lot of local businesses. And for example, I reached out to the local zoo and I said, what if we had a field trip here? I mean, we're a nonprofit. We have no funding right now, but would it be possible that we took our kids for free? And they said, yeah, sure, come on in. So, a lot of things have come out of it. The other year, our big struggle would be for food, trying to figure out how to get all halal food because we have a lot of students who follow halal customs. So we actually were able to ask the local school district if they'd be willing to include us in their free lunch program over the summer. And we were able to become a distribution site for free lunches for kids throughout the area. So that's the best piece of advice I've ever heard. Just ask, it doesn't hurt. Nothing bad can come of it other than just what's the worst that can happen. They can say no.
Totally.
So it's those few yeses that really come in handy.
Definitely. I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, it's funny because mine was very similar to Lucy's, I think with a slightly different twist. But, I think that, so the overall advice is just to go in with curiosity. And I think that a lot of this was something that I still say to myself when I feel like I'm speaking to someone who has much higher credential to me, or their time is really valuable. And actually, the first time I received this advice was when we were raising money for Slapped. I think asking for money, especially when you're young and for a project, is really daunting. And I remember this guy that I was getting advice from. He's a professor at the Booth School, which is the business school at University of Chicago. He teaches finance. And he told me a quote by the rapper Pitbull. And I actually don't really like the guy, but the insight was, ask for money, get advice, ask for advice, get money twice. Yeah. And I think that's like really kind of cringy, but it's a good point, right? Like, I think that if you go into things with genuine interest of what the person does, you show them what you really want to do, you can't go wrong, even if you don't get the outcome that you want. And sometimes you get a better outcome that you hadn't anticipated. And I think that, going in with curiosity, authenticity, not thinking too much about who this person is or setting yourself up for failure because you want one specific outcome.
Right.
Just going in with curiosity is something that just makes it easier and better. And I think it's very related to what Lucy was saying. So just Lucy.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more with that also. Thank you all so much for your answers. We're on to our second to last question. This one is from another person who is watching with us named Alex Goldberg. And Alex asked, was there someone who acted as a mentor for you that has helped you get to where you are today? So would love to hear from perhaps Ethan first, if there was someone that has really made an impact and served as that role model or that mentor for you.
Yeah, of course. So many people, but if I would have to name one, it would be the youth director at my temple. I actually started the project because of him. It was one of our, it was either 8th or 9th grade, like pre-confirmation classes. And he told me a theory, and it was called the creator versus victim theory. And it basically says that if there's something in your life that is, normally a negative thing, whether it's a diagnosis or trauma, etc., that you have two options, and it's either to feel victimized and be a victim, or to go and become a creator and create the life that you want to live. And that is something that really stuck to me. And he has been so inspirational, helping me, from starting my project all the way to, helping with advice, keeping it going. And he's been a great mentor, definitely.
Yeah, thank you. Lucy?
Sure. So I mentioned her briefly before, but also the director of education at my synagogue, Denise, has been there for me every step of the way. She was the very first person who said yes. And she was there with me at every meeting, to the point where people assumed that she was my mother, which was very funny. Especially because her daughter is now heavily involved in the organization as well. So when they find out that she has an actual daughter that is not me, it's very funny. But yes, just someone who inspires teens. And she's actually moving on to a different position somewhere else. And she's still involved with Camp Nefesh and plans to stay involved. So getting someone like that who's so invested and just as passionate about something as you are is so important and so meaningful. Not once did she ever doubt my ambition. Every step of the way she said, Lucy, you can do this. And I'm so thankful for that.
Yeah, that's really, really powerful. Thank you. We love those synagogue youth directors. Genevieve?
Yeah, it's hard to think of just like one person, to be honest. I think the first person that really made me was outside sort of like, the real answer is my mom. She's the coolest and the one who made me believe I could do everything and the one who made me talk to people. But outside, your mom, most of the time you feel like they have to believe in you. So I think the person outside of my family and sort of my immediate home network was a woman named Star Marcello. She was the COO of the Innovation Center at the Booth Business School at Chicago, and now she's one of the deans there. Actually, she's big boss things. But I basically went into her office because I was introduced to her. I can't even remember. It was through my entrepreneurship club in high school. I was a freshman at the time. And I remember I had a little 15-minute meeting with her. And I sat in her corner office and I told her about Slapped. Slapped was nothing. I tell you, nothing. No website, I had a one-pager. And I said, this is what I want. This is the impact that I want to build. And it was through that conversation that not only did I feel like she gave me the tools, she sort of told me, you need to develop this literature around it. You should speak to this person. You should consider these things around a 501c3 nonprofit. But she also, I think her sort of tacit mentorship that only built from there really gave me tremendous belief in myself. And she, wrote my recommendation to college and is still someone I see her kids. I mean, she's become that person for me. And there have been a lot of people, I think, who I felt like have moved mountains for me, but she's definitely the first.
Totally. Yeah. And can say with 100% confidence, even without like knowing the inner workings of all of your lives, that I'm sure that there's at least one person, if not more, that would answer the mentor or the role model question, and you're the answer, because all the impact that you've all made for young people in the various topics of work that you're doing is truly incredible. Speaking of young people and younger versions of you, we are on to our last question, which is probably my favorite question to ask people. I know, I just want to keep on. I'm like, after this, we'll keep on talking. But this question is similar to a question that we got in the chat from someone who's watching named Kira. So this question to ask you all is, in hindsight, looking back at the journeys that you've all had with your leadership, and also like, I know all of us have led our projects throughout our adolescence, so those things are really intertwined. What would you tell yourself when you're just starting out? What advice would you tell a peer that is looking to make a difference in the world, that perhaps is around the age that you were when you started your organization? So Lucy, I would love to hear from you first.
Sure. So this is so cliche, and it's also a song lyric, but don't stop believing. You are your own worst enemy. You're your biggest obstacle. And I know I was my biggest obstacle. I think the minute that someone believed in me, I knew that I could believe in myself. Yes, thank you, Diller Teen Fellows, for commenting. Great song. So yes, I think just getting past all of my fear that I wouldn't be enough, having a growth mindset, knowing that I could be able to learn and grow from any obstacle that I overcame was one of the biggest things. So just believing in myself and knowing that I could get through it was my biggest piece of advice to past Lucy.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. Genevieve or Ethan, would love to hear from both of you what advice you would tell your younger self and just people out there that are watching that want to make a difference.
Sure. For me, I would say surround yourself with your tribe. You know, it's your group of people. Whether for me, it's my parents and all of my mentors, my best friend and my person. Just being able to surround yourself with how I say, like, surround yourself with your tribe and have that support group, because doing things alone, especially starting a project, is really hard. And being able to have people who, whether they're necessarily helping out with the project itself or not, just being there to support you through it all, is a huge thing.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. My group of friends have turned into my collaborators, and are like so much of what the validation project is. So that's super important. Genevieve, what would you say to your past self?
I think that again, I'm not even going to preface it. I think I would just say, what would you do if you weren't afraid? And that's something that was a huge tool to me this past summer and other things that I've done. But I think that being able to really look inwards to your own experience and say, where are the times that I've really struggled? Where could I have needed more support? And where can I see that in other people's experiences? Who can I talk to better understand their experience? What can I share that may make me kind of vulnerable, but actually can, open things up a little bit? I think that taking a pause and thinking about, what would you do if there weren't stakes, if you weren't worried about the consequences,
Right.
because I think it's the right thing, is difficult. But I think what I would tell my 13-year-old self, because I was so freaked out at the time. I remember that. I think back to the mentorship question, there were just like so many people that were like, you can do it. And without them, I probably would have been like,
Yeah.
I never lost for words, but I think I was a little quiet at the time, actually. So, I think I think that's what I would say to myself.
Yeah, no, I think that's super powerful, especially like what we've all touched on throughout this, of we're told by many people as we are young that like we have to wait for a specific age or a specific accolade to be able to press go on whatever that idea is. And and I'm sure everyone in the chat has a story too of we're all testaments to the fact that that isn't true, and that the power of yourself telling yourself in the mirror and an adult or another peer telling you that they believe in you can move mountains. And we all need it, because the impact that the three of you have made on the world because of that moment, that 10 seconds of courage, taking the deep breath and publishing that website or making that call to that school or whatever it was, have changed the world. So thank you all so much for this conversation. I know I feel like I just had a cup of coffee, even though it's like 8 p.m. on the East Coast, because of how great all your stories were and your advice. Unfortunately, we are coming to an end. So I'm going to hand it off to Jen at the Diller Teen Fellows program to close us out. And thank you to everyone who's watching for being a part of this conversation also.
Wow, thank you all so much. I'm really glad that I only have like a 1 minute, thing to say to thank you, because nobody, especially my age, needs to follow that. You've said it all, and yet I feel like there's so much more we can discuss. And it's very fitting, Lucy, that you said don't stop believing for many reasons. And one is that it's by journey. And you've shared your journeys of leadership with us. Diller Teen Fellows in and of itself is an ongoing journey. Also, your impact on the world is an ongoing journey. And so today is the opening of a conversation and of dialogue and maybe of new connections. So we invite all of the fellows who are participating to reach out, to connect. If there's somebody that we can connect you to that you want to learn more about their work and their journey, you can follow us on Instagram at Diller Teen Fellows. And if those of you who are interested in learning more about the awards, we're all one big, impactful Diller family. So thank you guys so much for sharing your insights, your journeys, and just really, the strength of your stories that are in many cases, in all of your cases, so personal, and your ability to do that with ease was just truly extraordinary. So thank you. And the last thing I want to do, as you had all mentioned, your efforts being team efforts, that is true for everything we do at Diller. And I'm incredibly grateful to all of our panelists, to Val, our moderator, and really to my colleagues who made all of this happen. Aaron Jacobs, Idan Sharabi, Lowell Isaacs, Leah Wartendijk, and Megan Edelman, and so many others. So thank you all, and we'll look forward to the next time. Those of you who are joining from the Fellows, stay tuned for the rest of Diller Presents June events. There's lots more coming up. You guys are all welcome to join. One of our next sessions is with Lior Raz from the show Fauda. It'll be an exciting, exclusive experience for Diller. So lots more to come. Continue on this journey together. Thank you.